Would you be the jerk for trying to give your girlfriend a reality check about their dream and telling them they need to get a real job? We'll get into that in a bit, but first, am I the jerk for telling my in-laws I won't let my husband's stepbrother stay with us once he said no? My husband, 30-year-old male, has a stepbrother, 31-year-old male, and they do not get along. They never did. They also don't consider each other family, brothers, or anything of the sort. His stepbrother will occasionally, from what I know, try the whole "we're brothers" thing when he wants something, but my husband has never and will never consider that man his family. And if his mom and stepdad divorced tomorrow, or if his mom were to die, he would never have another thing to do with his stepbrother, and would not feel the need to stand by him if both his mom and stepdad were to die and they were the last of the family. He was always clear with me on that. He did not invite his stepbrother to our wedding and told his mom that she didn't have to come either if she was unhappy with his choice. There has been absolutely zero contact for 4 years now. My husband's stepbrother lived in another state and didn't come back to visit my dad/his husband's stepdad, which was the only contact either had in their adult years. Now he's returning to be closer to his dad, or has returned, and he was looking for a temporary place to stay while apartment hunting. Right now he's with my in-laws, but he has a big commute to work, according to the three of them, and mother-in-law asked if my husband and I would let him stay with us for a few weeks until he gets a place figured out. My husband said no, told his mom and stepdad not to offer money or another incentive because he does not want his stepbrother here, and that's final. So mother-in-law and stepfather-in-law called me up and asked if I would say yes and get my husband to accept it. They told me it would mean so much and maybe the two of them could finally bond and act like brothers. Mother-in-law told me it would be for max 9 weeks, and that he would behave and wouldn't fight with my husband. I told her none of that mattered because my husband said no, and that was what mattered to me. She told me to think of family and our future kids and having an uncle. I told her again, it didn't make a difference to me. Stepfather-in-law told me as my husband's wife, I could help influence him in a positive way. When I still reiterated that my answer was no and I stood by my husband's answer, they told me I should be helping, not encouraging this BS. Am I the jerk? OP's not the jerk. They're respecting their husband's wishes. They can't be forced into having a relationship that they just flat out clearly said multiple times over many years, it sounds like, they do not want. OP's being, in my opinion, a great partner by not listening to these in-laws and working behind OP's back to go around what OP has declared is what they want. C. Majuscula wrote, "Not the jerk. Your in-laws are trying to play the two of you off each other, which shows a shocking lack of understanding of the situation or some delusion that your husband can be convinced into a relationship. Do they think you're not going to mention this attempt to your husband? Do they think that he's going to react well to this little stunt?" OP responded saying, "I think they thought my husband wouldn't care, and he's not saying anything to them about this, but he isn't happy with them either. He's holding it in for now, which will give them a false sense of him being fine with it." Also, hi, I'm Steven, and if you guys enjoy getting to decide whether or not all of these people are jerks, why not hit those like and subscribe buttons down below? That said, our next story is, am I the jerk for trying to get my husband to recover from his surgery at his parents' house instead of helping him myself? 1 week ago, I had a traumatic delivery. After pushing for over 6 hours, I had an emergency C-section and delivered our first baby. On top of the pain from the C-section, I pulled my back out from pushing for so long, and the doctors told me I had the worst swelling they've ever seen. So recovering from that wasn't fun at all either. A couple of days before my due date, he fractured his ankle at a softball game and got surgery for it yesterday. I'm in so much pain from chest to toes, and since I didn't have as much help from him, I was forced to do a lot way too quickly, which hindered my own recovery. It's hard enough having a newborn rely on me, which I've been managing fine, but having my husband whine about how much pain his ankle is in and having to cater to him would not be good for my own mental health. And I think he'll heal way quicker if he just toughs out his hardest days with his parents so his mom can take care of him. The baby doesn't rely on him right now, and it doesn't matter to the baby that he won't be here. Even though I know he misses the baby and I understand why he wants to be here, I know that it's my job as his wife to care for him, and I wish I had more sympathy for what he's going through, but the lack of support I felt during my pregnancy and delivery and postpartum has just kind of made me numb to it all. That sounds horrible, but this whole thing has just been very hard on me, and I'm sure it hasn't been fun for him either, but these are just the cards that I've been dealt with. And I'm trying to do what's best for me so that I can do what's best for our baby, and the quicker I can recover, the quicker I'll be able to be there to help him. Edit, I spoke with his mom and she understands that it's best for him to recover at least a week while he's at his house, or at least until he's not completely bedbound. My mom has been with me and I'm not alone. He wouldn't expect me to do anything for him and would try and be as self-sufficient as possible, but he almost completely wiped out in the kitchen the other day trying to clear his own plate. He did also have a major surgery and will need some help that I currently cannot provide him with, and I just want what will be best for him. As for the people who think I'm the jerk for the way I spoke of my husband, I love him with my entire heart and he is a good husband and a good father. And I am aware that I definitely do hold a bit of resentment surrounding the entire situation and the entire labor and delivery process and recovery, which is just one of those it is what it is situations, and there's nothing anyone can do about it. I feel bad that he's in pain. I genuinely would never want to see him in pain, but due to everything that's happened, I don't have the sympathy to give. Like hearing about how 8 hours of sleep doesn't have him well rested, or how he's so uncomfortable it's hard to sleep. As if I haven't been dealing with that for half of my pregnancy. I'm also a new mom and my hormones are all over the place trying to adjust to everything. Not looking for any sympathy for myself, I just wanted to know if my feelings in reaction to any of this was valid. I completely understand, like OP said, that it would hurt to be sent away essentially from your newborn baby, but at the same time, if it does make things all the easier for both of them, considering the condition OP is in, it probably is for the best, especially if the husband is in a condition that he needs some assistance that OP, who honestly should be darn near bedbound right now, not having to take care of a newborn and their husband, cannot provide. WebAcceptable7932 wrote, "Not the jerk. You're not physically able to give him the help and care that he needs. Your priority is yourself and the baby. He needs somebody who would be able to help him, and that's not you. Would his mother be able to still bring him by the house for an hour or two a day to see the baby? He sees the baby still, but it wouldn't be up to you to help him." OP responded with, "I would go to him if I could drive, but I can't drive for the next 6 weeks. The problem is he needs to stay in one place, because traveling in a car and having to deal with all the steps to our house is not going to help him. His parents live in a ranch-style house, and I know it will suck for him, but I'm really pushing for him to stay there for a week, but I don't think he would want to stay there for even a couple days. It's all just really hard and an unfortunate situation." Our next story is, am I the jerk for naming 4 of my kids' names inspired by all 4 grandparents, but not naming my 5th child for my stepmother? My husband and I have 5 children together. Our last baby was born 5 weeks ago. We chose to give our first 4 kids names inspired by their grandparents, our parents. Their names are not directly the same name as our parents, but inspired by the person. Summer for our oldest, for my mom, whose name meant summer and was a summer baby, which our daughter is also. Robin for our second, for my father-in-law. It's a play on his name, and robins are his favorite birds. Luca for our third, for my mother-in-law who's always loved that name but felt it was similar to hers and didn't want to do that, and she loves the name for a girl. Phoenix for our 4th child, for my dad and has a nickname in common with my dad's name, and my dad always found Phoenixes cool. For our youngest, we ended up with a name inspired by my grandma and my husband's grandma. They had the same first name, sort of. Both used the same name, but one had a longer, more formal name, while the other had it as their given name, which made it easier. My grandma was the woman I saw in a motherly capacity after my mom died while I was young, so honoring her was special to me. But we wanted to give our kids their own names, hence the way we chose to honor. The choice for our youngest child's name was controversial with my stepmother. She and my dad met when I was 8, married when I was 12, and my mom died when I was 6, for context. She saw me as her daughter for a long time, but stopped seeing me that way mostly when she realized I didn't return her affection in that way because, while I like her enough, I don't regard her as my mother figure and never ever considered calling her mom. I never considered honoring her with one of my kids' names. But this has upset her given our youngest's name. Also the fact that she has 2 kids with my father, but both are disabled and won't be having their own children, so she doesn't get to experience it like my dad did. She told me all of this, and she expressed that she feels like I was disrespectful to her and her efforts to be a mother to me. Efforts I always rejected, but she feels I should have shown love and appreciation for in the naming of my children when all the other parents were honored. Am I the jerk? I don't think OP's the jerk. They didn't want to name their kid after her. I mean, that's just kind of flat out their choice to make. Even if OP had set a precedent, if they decided to go a completely different direction with their kid's name, that's their choice to make, right? How can you be the jerk? Inevitable Chest 143 wrote, "Not the jerk for not naming your kid after her, but you should reconsider how much effort you put into the relationship. And try to put in more. She clearly cares about you a lot, and you even remark how you don't put as much in. She's not your mom. She'll never be your mom. But she has been in your life for 20 years and for major life moments. How do your other kids refer to her?" To the West I Go shared their own perspective on that, saying, "OP's stepmom wants to be recognized as a mom/mother figure and refuses to be accepted as less. So no, OP doesn't need to put more energy into the relationship. Maybe if stepmom just loved OP regardless, things would be different. Just because you marry into an already made family doesn't mean you deserve the title mom or dad. Not the jerk." This next story is, am I the jerk for telling a friend to stop watching so much adult content? I, 19-year-old female, have a twin brother who I'm very close to. Let's call him Jay. We hang out together a lot, and I consider him to be one of my best friends. We became a lot closer during high school when we found out we were both bisexual. Making friends doesn't come easy to me, and I really only have 2 close friends. 3 if you count my best friend's childhood friend that hangs out with us sometimes. My twin is very social and has a bigger group of friends that he hangs out with all the time, since most of them go to the same college. Last week when we were hanging out with some of our mutual friends from high school, one of them made a comment about my shirt, saying it looked like one my brother had in high school. I told her it was the same shirt, and she gave me a kind of weird look. I brushed it off because I didn't think she meant anything by it. My brother and I sometimes share clothes because we have a similar enough style and are about the same height and build. For us, it just means we have a lot more clothing options. Yesterday, I ran into that same friend after one of my classes and we stopped to talk. My brother called me in the middle of our conversation to ask if I wanted food, since he was ordering anyway, and before I hung up, I said, "Bye, I love you." He said it back, and my friend gave me a strange look. She didn't say anything at first, but then when I asked her what was wrong, she said it was just strange that I said "I love you" to my brother. I laughed it off and asked her if she didn't say it to her siblings. She said no because that was weird. I didn't know what to say, so I just left it there and told her I needed to go so I could meet Jay at home before he left for his friend's house, since they were planning on hanging out. She started talking about how weird our relationship was, and how it wasn't normal for siblings to share clothes or say "I love you," hug, hang out so much, or do any of the things we do. And how high school was weird since we were always together and talking to each other. She also brought up a comment I made in high school in response to a question about what I would do if my twin died. I said that I didn't think I could live without him because he was a part of me. This question was asked to another set of twins we were friends with, and they both had the same answer. The whole time she was going on, I just stared at her because I really couldn't believe what I was hearing. Eventually she stopped and I just blurted out, "You know, you should really stop watching so much adult stuff." She was very embarrassed and went off at me for saying that. I just left and went home. I told Jay what happened and he just laughed at me while I felt like I was dying inside because I couldn't believe I said that. I asked my friends what they thought and they laughed at me and told me I'm not the jerk, but I still feel like I am. So, am I the jerk? Now, I definitely think there's a great possibility that OP could be wrong in their assumption here. I think it's very well possible that she doesn't have some brain rot from watching too much adult stuff, and that's why she's associating all of that stuff with being too inappropriate. And on the other hand, I present maybe it's just the kind of family they grew up in. I myself grew up in a family that at the end of calls, we didn't normally say "I love you," we didn't hug all that often. So for somebody who never really experienced that growing up, it could seem like a very foreign thing and a really intimate thing to be sharing just between siblings, and that's why they could just be completely off base here. But regardless, I still think OP's not the jerk. Fantastic C3462 wrote, "Not the jerk." They quoted, "She then started talking about how weird our relationship was and how it wasn't normal for siblings to share clothes or say "I love you," hug, hang out so much, or do any of the things we do. It's very common to do all of those things if you like your siblings and enjoy spending time with them. A lot of people don't. She probably has had a bad relationship with her siblings, thinks that's the default, and so you're too close with your brother because you're on the other end of the spectrum. Our next story is, am I the jerk because my niece overheard me ranting about how I want my sister to stop dumping her kids at my house? My sister, we'll call each other sisters but are actually cousins/god siblings, has 2 young kids. She is very socially active and often needs someone to watch her kids. Since I live nearby and the kids like me, it usually ends up being me, even though she has other options. When I was working at a real job, she was reasonable, asking if I could watch them, leaving money for food and picking them up on time, asking only once or twice a month, if that, so I didn't mind watching them. But now that I'm doing art commissions, she views it as me not doing anything. She kept trying to hint to me that she wanted me to watch her kids, and I didn't pick up on it until now because I'm on the spectrum. I don't understand hints. She pretty much stopped talking to me entirely after that and bypasses me and asks her brother, my roommate/cousin, to bring the kids over without telling me, sometimes for multiple days. He leaves the childcare responsibilities to me, saying, "That's what their auntie is for." This has been happening every weekend since late May, and it's now July. Today I wanted to do my workout downstairs where there's space, but I heard the kids screaming and assumed they might be staying over without notice again. I was so frustrated, I ranted to my brother while we were in his room, and my niece overheard, which upset her. All I said was, "And nobody even told me they'd be here," which I'm sure still really hurt. Now my cousins are mad at me for damaging our relationship. Am I the jerk? I plan to apologize to my niece when she's ready to talk, though I don't know how to explain something this complicated to a kid. OP's definitely not the jerk here. I would go to the kid and try to explain to them, "Listen, I love hanging out with you. I love seeing you. This is not about you being here. It's about the fact that I've got work to do, I've got responsibilities, and nobody's caring about what I've got going on and just assuming that I can drop all of my responsibilities without any care for my personal life to babysit, and that's just not fair to me." By the Brook 88 quoted, "And asks her brother, my roommate and cousin, to bring the kids over without telling me, sometimes for multiple days. He leaves the childcare responsibilities to me, saying, 'That's what their auntie is for.' Nope. If her brother volunteered himself to babysit, that's fine. But he shouldn't volunteer OP's time. I'd refuse to help him. I bet he would volunteer less if he got stuck with the work. Not the jerk." Gavin Kurt added exactly this. He is the one who agreed to watch them, then he is responsible for them, not you. Make that clear to him and tell him not to guilt you into watching them when you don't want to. They aren't your kids, and it's not your job to raise them. Our next story is, am I the jerk for not taking my stepsister to practice because she refused to get in my car that was too dirty for her? Me and my brother share a car. It's not all his fault, but the car isn't clean in the slightest, more by him than me. It isn't that disgusting, but the seats are old, sorta stained, and we have our backpacks and schoolwork kinda scattered in the back. One of our chores is taking our stepsister to softball practice. Usually my brother does it because I'm at practice for my sport when hers starts, but I had an off day while my brother was taking a nap, so I had to take her. My stepdad said I could take his car if I wanted, but I wanted to drive mine. When I pulled it up, my stepsister refused to get in because it was so dirty. I told her to get over it, but she kept refusing, and I guess my brother's been taking our dad's car whenever he takes her to practice. She kept annoying me about how gross the car is and refusing to get in, and I just had enough. This is where I might be the jerk. I told her to go ask her dad for a ride and drove off because I had places to be too. About 5 minutes later, my dad calls me and is ticked, saying I am too old to be acting this way and how I should have just taken his car. I told him that the car isn't bad and she's overreacting, but he didn't want to hear it and wasn't happy. I'm just confused by this whole mess and wondering what others think. Am I the jerk? To be fair, I don't know if we can truly answer this question without actually having a good look at the car, but I would almost lean towards expecting if somebody is refusing to get in the car, it's probably for a good enough reason rather than the person being unreasonable. I mean, when OP says the seats are old, sorta stained, I mean, what does that actually look like? Law Nerds wrote, if your car is actually a biohazard and you're too much of a teenage male who doesn't comprehend how gross he actually is to realize it, then you're the jerk. If your stepsister is just being a pretentious teenage girl who thinks she deserves to be driven around in style and doesn't want to be seen in an embarrassing but otherwise acceptable car, then you're not the jerk. We would need actual pictures of the interior of the car to decide. Dragon Silica wrote, OP answered this elsewhere. The car isn't that clean, but nothing would stain clothes and a little smell, but the windows were gonna stay down. His brother refuses to clean it, so he's refusing to as well. The brother also smokes an electronic pen. That car is probably even worse than he realizes because he's gotten used to it somewhat. No 14-year-old girl wants to have that smell stick with her during practice. Our next story is, am I the jerk for not allowing my kids a snack after dinner? I, 28-year-old female, and my husband, 32-year-old male, have 3 beautiful boys together aged 8, 7, and 4. Almost every evening, we sit together at the table as a family and enjoy dinner. We have a strict rule that if you don't finish your plate, you don't get a snack later or dessert. If our kids are full before their plate is gone, we let them leave the table but save their plate in case they ask for a snack later. This really hasn't been an issue until recently, and specifically tonight where my husband and I got into a fight in front of the kids disagreeing if they could have a snack or not after dinner. For background purposes, financially I would say we're equal when it comes to income. My husband makes twice as much as me and pays all of the bills except the mortgage. I pay the mortgage, our youngest's daycare, and I buy our groceries and any household necessities. We don't fight about finances. Recently, my husband's been not allowing the kids to have a snack after dinner, even if they finish their plate. I've been arguing back saying, they finished, they were allowed a snack. Tonight, our 7-year-old asked for a snack after dinner, and my husband flipped saying, don't ask again, you're not having any more food tonight. I told him he was being unreasonable and snuck my 7-year-old down to have a clementine and a banana. My husband thinks I'm the jerk for undermining his decision that the kids won't have snacks. But I think he's being unreasonable, and if we have the means to feed our kids dinner and snacks after, why wouldn't we? So, am I the jerk? Edit, I titled this wrong. I let my kids have a snack after dinner. My husband didn't. Sorry. Info, my kids snack freely throughout the day. We give them small portions at dinner. The reason we keep the plate if they don't finish is because they will sometimes have a bite or two of dinner and say they're full, then minutes later, ask for dessert. I've never myself been somebody that's been too regular with food and having 3 strict meals or whatever the kind of common guideline is. So realistically, I don't know if I'm really the best kind of person to answer whether or not this is good or not, if I even really think OP is the jerk or not. I mean, I think if the kids are hungry after eating what is considered dinner, that sure, having a small snack like an orange and a banana is not bad. I think it's a bit weirder to definitely say, I am ignoring your hunger needs, go to bed. Active Anteater 1884 wrote, your and your husband's behavior toward food is weird as heck. Everybody sucks here. What you're doing is forcing your kids to eat, perhaps past the point of satiety if they want, I don't know, ice cream. And everyone wants ice cream. The keeping the leftovers in the fridge in case the offending child is hungry later is just beyond. What do you say? Okay, you 2 kids finished your meal, so for a snack you get 2 pieces of candy. You, 3rd child, didn't finish your meal, so you get cold broccoli. Keep on this way if you want to give your kids an eating disorder. Our next story is, am I the jerk for telling my parents to ask their foster children for help instead of me? My 34-year-old male life could have been okay growing up, except that my parents wanted to be good people, so they became foster parents. I think that was notable of them. Those kids needed help. The downside was that I got ignored. I got less attention than those kids because I was independent and didn't need the help. Gifts for my grandparents became gifts for the family. My grandparents put a stop to that by not buying me gifts but taking me out for instead. I got to go see movies and taken out for meals and weekend trips with my grandparents. My dad's folks took me to Disneyland, and my mom's mom and dad took me to New York City. My parents tried to get the money for this stuff given to me, them instead. I begged my grandparents not to do that. I left the house when I was 17. I graduated early and got into a trade. My grandfather was in the union and he got me in. I've been at it for 17 years now and I'm doing okay. My parents are not. They ran themselves ragged taking in all those kids. Even the money they got wasn't enough to make up for their sacrifices. They asked me for help and I said no. I know that if I give them money, they will just waste it on the kids they took in after I left. I told them they had a plethora of foster kids that they could ask for money. My mom said she was disappointed in me and that she thought she had raised me better. I said I raised myself from about 8 years old onward. My grandparents are tapped out too. My parents already owe them so much money. My wife says she understands how I feel but thinks I'm being mean. My mom thinks I'm having a grudge from childhood. I refuse to speak with my father, but I assume he's still giving my old things to the new kids. OP's not the jerk here. It's a pretty common sentiment that when you grow up, you don't have to give back to your parents. You're not obligated to. And especially for OP, who kind of feels like their parents kind of abandoned them and instead focused on these other kids, whether or not it was for a good cause, they still feel they were abandoned and neglected. It's just understandable to me that they don't want to give back. Strapo wrote, "Not the jerk. Your parents ignored you and tried to take money from you. You are not holding a grudge from childhood. You are simply recognizing a pattern that they never made you a priority. They were irresponsible in their financial planning by taking in so many kids. That's not your problem. Tell your wife I do not think you're being mean. You just don't want to be taken advantage of." Our next story is, am I the jerk for telling my girlfriend she needs to get a real job and she'll never be a famous comedian? 31-year-old male, and my girlfriend is 28. Her and I have been together for 6 years and have been living together for the last 2. Going to attempt to keep this short, so please ask for details if I leave something out. Girlfriend has always enjoyed doing comedy and has done open mic nights since we've met shortly after college. She had a real sales job though. That was her Monday to Friday 9 to 5 job where she made decent money. I have a good but hard job and make almost triple what my girlfriend was making when she had her job. I said had because last August she quit her job because it was taking away from her comedy ventures. She told me a year from now she thinks she can really make it. I was a bit skeptical, but since I make enough to support us, I encouraged her because I want to be a supportive boyfriend. Since she quit her job, she began doing Uber and DoorDash, which is where she makes 100% of her money. Her comedy has gotten us $0. Over the past few months, I've started to resent her though. She constantly complains she has no money yet drives for Uber or DoorDash maybe 3 times a week for maybe 4 hours at a time. I've been paying a lot more for household expenses and I'm not saving as much as I'd like to anymore. She sleeps till noon because sometimes her open mics run real late before she even gets to perform, and when she gets up, she just burns around on TikTok and YouTube looking for inspiration. She also gets very moody with me if I don't come to 90% of her open mic performances. Even after working a 14-hour day, she will get mad if I don't go to her open mic at 11 p.m. on a Tuesday. Last night, I did the unthinkable. I asked her to consider going back to a full-time job. I said she should still do her comedy, but I'm struggling with taking care of our expenses all by myself. When she gave a dismissive answer, I told her firmly that she will never be a famous comedian. I said she's 28 and it's time to grow the freak up and join the real world because this is totally unfair to me that I bust my butt while she lives in La La Land, and that she can't be this naive at this age by thinking she's going to support herself with this. She stared at me in silence for a few minutes, started crying and went to stay with a friend. She called me a freaking jerk and that I'm the worst friend ever. She has not answered her phone today yet. So, am I a freaking Richard Head jerk? There is part of me that's like, OP did say, go ahead, leave your job, let's roll the dice, let's focus on the comedy. That may not have been too long-term in terms of thinking. I think OP's closer to not the jerk than they are the jerk, but I especially really hate the way OP towards the end devolved into, you need to grow up and just realize your comedy's never gonna make it, you're 28, you need to stop living in La La Land. Should she get some kind of more stable, well-paying job? Sure. Is it fair to tell somebody, especially in comedy, that they'll never blow up because they're 28 and haven't yet? To tell somebody stop living in La La Land with their dreams? In that regard, I don't think it's fair. Anxious Telephone 326 wrote, nope, he's not the jerk. She was taking him for granted the moment she wasn't contributing in the relationship and expected him to make all of the sacrifices of his free time, money, and their shared life for her sole benefit. She needed to hear it. It's a super hard and oversaturated living to make a full-time salary in. She's delusional if she thinks she can. Sure, a few do make it, but most people have other jobs or gigs they have to do to make ends meet while pursuing their dreams. It's one thing to ask a partner to be patient as you're trying to make a big dream happen if there's a good chance of the outcome actually panning out, such as waiting for someone to go through nursing school, because if you graduate, you will confidently be able to get to a nursing job in today's health system. But her plan is such a long shot. She should absolutely be working outside of her gigs to make money, people need to hear it. I had an old roommate who would go through the motions, float through life at dead-end crappy jobs, and daydream nonstop about once he hits the lottery, his life will be able to fall into place. It took me yelling at him, well, that's never gonna happen, so before you waste your life on that, how about picking a plan that will actually give you a better shot at retiring one day so you don't have to work until you die? He soon buckled down after and found a better paying job. But with that being said, that's all the time we have for today. Now, if you want to hear another crazy Am I the Jerk Here story, check out that video on the left. Or if you missed my latest video, check out that video on the right. That said, I'll see you all next time with some more stories.